Hello and welcome to this edition of City Hall Insider. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and we have two guests on the program today. First, we have Michelle Paul. I want to make sure I get your title right because it just does not roll off the tongue. Director of Resilience and Environmental Stewardship.
That's it.
It's a tough one to put on the business card.
It is. It's a tough one to fit.
Exactly. Michelle is a repeat guest on our program, so we thank you for coming in. Obviously, lots of things going on with your department right now, but obviously the big thing that we wanted to talk about is the NB Resilient program that has kicked off recently, and you've been working on for a long time to get that off the ground, and it's finally here.
We have, yep.
Tell us a little bit, what is NB Resilient?
Sure. NB Resilient is New Bedford's climate action and adaptation plan, where we look at things that we can do to kind of soften the impacts of climate change, but also how we can adapt to it and not just bounce back, but as I've heard before, bounce forward into a better position to really thrive in the face of stressors like we're encountering right now with the pandemic.
You must have learned, as you were developing the plan, I mean, the things you must have learned about how New Bedford is impacted by the climate must have been, I guess, surprising, or just, I mean, things you don't usually see or even think about.
Right. It really is, it really does cross just about every area of the city. We've got 6 focus areas. We've got natural resources, economy and jobs, climate and energy, transportation, land use, utilities and waste, and I'm forgetting public health and safety. And it really does, resilience really covers just about every department, even those who don't realize that it does.
Is there one that's more, is there one that starts the domino out of those different categories?
I think utilities, infrastructure, and waste is the obvious one because we have the Port of New Bedford, and we have to make sure that structurally we are resilient to, even though we have the hurricane barrier will protect us from a hurricane, but it's not going to protect us from rising seas at high tide twice a day. You can't close the hurricane barrier twice a day and do that in any kind of sustainable way. So we've got to start looking at things that we can do to soften those impacts, but also ways that we need to adapt.
This is sort of obviously a long-term plan, but so everything will be gradual, but what are the things that really you think need to get done sooner rather than later, have to be addressed sooner rather than later?
I think some of the, and it's not low-hanging fruit because it's expensive, but a lot of the stormwater outfalls, some of those, which I tell people, some of those were around when Melville wrote Moby Dick.
Wow.
They're at the same elevation, and we've already seen climate change. And if the outfall is below water, it's going to affect how much water can actually get out that outfall. And you can't just replace the outfall, you've got to replace all the infrastructure that leads to it. So it really is a challenge. It's like, where to start. You can't just rebuild things as they get older. You've got to rebuild them in a different way. You've really got to retrofit and redesign.
Is this sort of plan something that all cities have been doing, or is New Bedford sort of ahead of the curve by doing this? I think
we are ahead of the curve, and I think we've implemented a lot more actions than other cities and towns that I know of. But MVP, the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness program, is a statewide program that Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito started, and I respect the way that they did it. They came up with the state's kind of adaptation and action plan, and then they kind of laid the groundwork for cities and towns around the Commonwealth to do their own plan so that it's not a cookie cutter. The things that we face are not the things that a Webster faces or other cities and towns. So we really were able to, from a real ground level position, really look at what are our vulnerabilities, and it's hurricanes, it's extreme wind, extreme weather, but also heat, and we've seen that for the past couple of summers.
Well, drought
and
last summer was
huge. And you can't always escape the heat. Not everybody can have air conditioning. Some of the multifamily houses are so old that even if the tenant can afford air conditioning, the window isn't stable enough to put that in. So, it's one thing when it's 90 degrees for a couple of days, but when it's in the 90s for 3, 4, 5 days, that's a real health stressor. So we really want to be thinking about things like that.
Is this something that, is the plan something that really needs coordination with other communities that are adjacent to us as well?
In some areas, no, but we are actually working with the town of Fairhaven on port resilience, because obviously we don't have the port just ourselves. We work with Fairhaven on that. So we already did a port resilience plan with the town of Fairhaven, and a maritime business toolkit, and also a sea level rise design guideline toolkit, so that when people are planning on putting a structure or improving a structure on the water, they can actually look at the most up-to-date sea level rise projections that Woods Hole Group did, and the state is now in the process of adopting. And it's not anything that we need to mandate at this point. We just make that information available so that developers or homeowners can make an educated decision about how much money they want to put into something that may or may not really be feasible to last 20 or 50 years.
It's interesting too, the plan, and we do have a piece that obviously we've done to talk about the plan, but there is a way for the public to see all the details of the plan on the city's website.
Right. Right. I mean, the plan is available on the website. If you go to nbresilient.com, you can download the plan, you could read through the plan, or you can look at the dashboard and the 6 focus areas that I talked about. And we looked at the actions to adopt in each of these 6 focus areas with kind of 4 lenses. 1, is it equitable? Number 2, is it something that will reduce greenhouse gases or at least not increase? What about city character? You don't want New Bedford to have to change the way it looks or the way it's perceived to others. We wanted it to be in keeping with our community character. And so, we looked at each of those things, and you can see each of those focus areas on the dashboard. You can go through, see some of the things that we're doing, some of the resources that are out there, and people can pick something that they're passionate about. Each of the tiles on the dashboard in those areas has things that you can do. So, the city, we want to be more resilient as a city, but we also encourage and try to provide the tools for people and families to be more resilient as well. Then if you go to action plan up on that dashboard, you can actually look in each of those focus areas, the goal areas and our priority actions, and we've already started listing progress, so that it's not just, we can really demonstrate that this isn't just a plan that's going to look the same in 5 years. We're giving what we've done, what status we're at with each of those priority actions.
Well, the interesting thing too is I think that you're also giving the residents a role in the plan for them to take part. It's not sort of the government telling you what to do. It's
right.
Everybody's got a role to play.
And we created the plan with the community. We had community-based organizations, people, yes, we had a lot of city staff, but we had other organizations that provide essential services to the city that aren't necessarily city-run, like Coastline Elder Services, Groundwork South Coast, the CEDC. So a lot of different organizations that have a different audience than we would normally see.
Was there anything that surprised you as you were developing the plan that maybe you didn't expect or even know as you were doing it?
Actually, Coastline Elder Services is one of the organizations that I did not know how many things they were involved with. Just how big a network they have and how much that they were already doing. So it's good to know that community organizations are doing that stuff, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to see where the organization needs support to continue the mission. A lot of our missions align, but we don't all want to be doing the same thing. It's not practical, and it's not a good use of resources. But if we're there to support each other and help each other in our mission, then we can get a lot further.
We only have a couple minutes left. I want to touch on some other things. Obviously, you guys have been very busy. I mean, Brownfields and cleanup of the harbor and what have you. What are some of the things, obviously, that you want to highlight right now that the staff is doing and your department's been working on?
Sure. We're wrapping up a Brownfields assessment grant. That was a citywide grant. We had several sites, and right now we're finishing up the Chemix Garage site over on Ash Street so that can be repurposed and redeveloped as residential. That makes more sense in that neighborhood than a automobile repair garage. We're also finishing up a cleanup grant at Duchesne Boulevard that we just put out for bid, and it looks like DF Prey will be constructing their corporate headquarters there. So that's a great addition to the business park. We also have 2 grants that we're just starting out with. An environmental workforce jobs training grant, where we just went out to bid to get a vendor, a vendor to do course providing, and they can teach underemployed or unemployed folks that want to work in the environmental industry, and especially local folks, so that we can get them trained. And then we also have a Brownfields Revolving Loan Fund grant, which is an $800,000 grant, and it's available to developers to take those sites that are a little bit more challenging from a Brownfields perspective and kind of fill that gap, the extra costs that they have to endure to redevelop because of the environmental issues. We can provide low or no interest loans to kind of help those properties along.
I would imagine that the job program probably has a lot of interest right now.
We are just starting to, now that we have a vendor to do the course, to do the course teaching, now we'll be able to actually get out and recruit. I know Old Bedford Village is going to be very active in helping us recruit. We're going to look to, a lot of the alternative high school, other areas where maybe not traditionally are gone to find recruits.
Anything right now that's just about wrapped up that people might notice that, any cleanup or anything that you folks have overseen that people might say, oh, wow, I didn't know that was done, or
yeah, well, I would say the neighborhood around New Bedford High School is looking a lot different than it did 5 years ago. Obviously, we've got the dog park there, so we were able to clean up that part of the Parker Street Way site, and then hand that over to the Parks Department, where they were able to get a grant and put a dog park there. And we also just finished construction on the outdoor soccer field that now Keith Middle School, they were the only middle school really without any outdoor facilities for their sports, and now we have a brand new soccer field. So that just wrapped up over the summer, and we're really happy about that.
And you've had a lot, there's been a lot of, you talk Brownfields, and I remember, talking a long time to you about Brownfields and whatever, but the work has still gone on for those locations, and
still
people don't realize
on.
that things are improving.
Right. And we want to update there. It's available on our website now, not on the NB Resilient website, but on the environmental stewardship page. Some of our Brownfields work, but that really needs to be updated and made more user-friendly. So we're thinking about some new ideas to get that word out as well.
For folks who need to get in touch with you or have any questions for you or the staff, how can they get in touch with you?
They can call. If you call my office, it goes to my cell phone, so even if I'm working at my home office, I will be answering it. And also michelle.paul at newbedford-ma.gov, and that's one L. One L.
Good seeing you again. Thanks for coming in with the
update.
Thank you, you too. All right, that's Michelle Paul, and we will come back with Judith Perkins, the Director of Human Resources for the city, in just a moment.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies. Selfie, nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on man, let's split a ride home.
Welcome back to City Hall Insider. Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and joining us is Judith Perkins, the Director of Human Resources here for the City of New Bedford. She's new.
Very new.
She's a little tense right now because she hasn't been a victim like Michelle before, not knowing what to expect. We'll be gentle. I promise we'll be gentle.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Obviously, we want to talk about the city and its handling of its employees with COVID, but just for an overview, talk to us just about what the personnel office does, your staff. Your staff covers really everything. You're probably one of the few departments that deals with all the departments.
We do. We deal with all the department heads with their needs. Our general focus is on assisting departments in getting the resources that they need to make their jobs easier and get the jobs done throughout the city. So anything from DPI here to environmental stewardship and making sure that everyone has the employees that they need. We advertise for positions. We do job descriptions, everything from soup to nuts pretty much when it comes to hiring someone or separating them from employment.
And you keep us updated with regards to rules and regulations from the federal, from the state. I mean, and those things change a lot.
They change quite a bit. In fact, in the world of labor law and employment law, we're constantly trying to keep up with different regulations that change based on anything that could happen within the court system. So we may find out about a case that happens out in Nebraska that would have an effect on something here in Massachusetts. So it's ever changing, and you've always got to keep on your toes and stick with the professional resources and the professional groups that help you keep on top of it.
And you've got a good staff that's been there, and I mean, you need obviously a knowledgeable staff, but you got a number of people there to help you too.
I've got a great staff. I've got Sarah, who is my assistant director. She's very knowledgeable and very reactive to pretty much anything that anyone needs. She keeps the day-to-day operations of the office moving forward. And then we've got Leslie. She's been there for 35 years.
Right.
I mean, there's institutional knowledge there that you just cannot replace in a book. And Lenora does a great job with benefits, and then Melissa does a lot of things, especially with FFCRA. She works on a lot of things with regards to the medical leaves that people need to have, and hiring and advertising. And then there's Jenny. She's actually transitioning into a new position to help out with what Leslie's been doing. She does a lot with civil service. And then we have a new gentleman in HR, Giovanni. He's my assistant, and he does a lot of the basic onboarding for employees.
And it's interesting as you just rolled through them, but their sort of expertise, it's widespread, the items that your staff has to know as you just rolled them off, civil service and medical, and I mean, there's a lot of things that are out there for you guys to have to relay to the departments. It's
a very complex department, and there's a lot more to it than I think the average person understands, because not only you're dealing with rules and regulations that you're trying to make sure that people are sticking to, but you've always got to understand that there's a human side to those rules and regulations, and not everything applies, and how you interpret those rules and regulations based on each individual and their situation is what makes you a better HR department. You've really got to take into consideration the human aspect of human resources.
It's people.
Exactly.
I don't think the people realize how many people work for the city. I mean,
it's quite a few.
Yeah.
I don't have the numbers perfect, but I know it's upwards of 1,600 on the city side, and I don't know how many are on the school side.
Right,
but it's pretty sizable.
Yeah, and like you said, they're all people.
They're all people. They all have, their own personal issues, and no matter how much you try to leave your issues at home, sometimes you do bring them with you to work, and they do have an effect on you, and people have to be a little more understanding. And I usually try to tell people, if someone's having a bad day, give them that moment to have that bad day, and then step back from it and look at it from another angle.
Perspective-wise, is New Bedford's HR department different from other communities? I mean, I would assume that obviously the laws and the regs are the same for everybody, but is the way the city goes about it different from other places?
You know, I've worked in 2 other municipalities in human resources, and the way they handle things are different, but when it comes down to brass tacks, pretty much everything is the same.
We wanted to talk, obviously, about, I mean, you've been thrown into this in a sense. You started during the pandemic. And
I got sworn in on April 6th.
And it's changed the way everything's gone about. Talk to us a little bit from your perspective, the starting, because it's changed for you in the past 9 months.
It has.
What are some of the challenges that you face? And I'm not talking just, starting a new job, but some of the challenges because of the pandemic that you faced right at the start. Because, I mean, you told me off camera the most important thing was the employee safety.
Absolutely.
So what were the challenges that you faced right at the start? And I mean, as you look at it now, 9 months later, how do you think the city's doing with what you looked at as the challenges?
Well, certainly when I first came here, it was new to everyone.
Right.
The fact that we were pretty much shut down, and I remember walking into City Hall and almost finding a ghost town, and it was very different to walk into a new job and not be able to meet your colleagues.
Yep.
I still haven't met the majority of my professional colleagues. I just met Michelle here this morning. I mean, we've certainly exchanged phone calls and emails, but being able to meet them face to face has been quite difficult. I have met some folks on Zoom, and we're all familiar with Zoom and probably have had enough of Zoom. But it's been challenging, certainly stepping into that and not being able to make those connections, because things become easier when you're able to sit face to face with a colleague and understand what it is that they're going through and what their needs might be, as opposed to just talking on the phone. You're able to develop those relationships a little bit better when you're face to face. I'm a social animal, so I tend to be that way anyway. But coming into City Hall and not knowing the geography of the city in itself was difficult. I would get in my car and put the navigation unit on so I could find any place. I'd have to use the navigation unit to find my way here, because I'm not only new to New Bedford, I'm new to the entire area.
Right.
So that was certainly a challenge. But with regards to City Hall, even knowing where the offices were within City Hall and finding the solicitor's office or the auditor's office, things that are on my floor and other places, we didn't really get out of the office that often. So that was a bit of a challenge, and trying to develop new protocols for something that was new to all of us, trying to follow the CDC guidelines and the state guidelines and pulling them together to find out what is it that we can find that's a perfect balanced blend that will work for New Bedford. And that certainly was challenging. So we've done a lot in respect to that.
Well, I know, because I remember we had when City Hall opened, you were at the forefront talking about the policies that were going to be in place, and obviously I know you worked with Damone and the mayor's office and what have you. But what goes into those types of decisions? Do you need CDC guidelines or the state guidelines, or does the city have some, lack of a better word, flexibility to do things on their own?
Well, what we need to do, and what we have done, is we've taken both the CDC guidelines and the state guidelines. And fortunately, we've got a great health director. I mean, Damone has been right on top of everything, great advice, and a lot of heads came together. And everything from the solicitor's office to the health department, the mayor's office, chief of staff, Neil Mello. We've all sat and had discussions on what is it that works for the city but stays within the guidelines of both CDC and the state health. Mm-hmm. And finding that balance and making sure that it is something that is suitable to our employees has certainly been challenging. And we've gone through a number of revisions when it comes to sending out a memo before we release that to the department heads. So.
Well, I mean, the great thing is, you've been in constant contact with the department heads, sending out and it seems as though, too, the guidelines change on I don't want to say a regular basis, but they have changed over the course of time, so you're constantly updating us on what those changes are.
Right. As soon as we find out a little bit, not we, but, CDC and epidemiologists and what have you, when they understand the virus a little bit better and how it's reacting to certain things, they may adjust the guidelines accordingly. They did so not too long ago with going from a 14-day to a 10-day strategy, and understanding exactly when the virus is shedding. So when people are most vulnerable to being contagious. So the more they know, the more they let us know, then the better we're able to equip our employees with the appropriate information to keep themselves safe.
You were talking to my staff outside because they were asking you questions, but the one thing I think I've heard from you just in the emails, and we were talking when we got the flu shot months ago, you and I, things really are on a case-by-case basis in a lot of ways.
Yes. You don't know how someone is going to react to any one thing. Just take, for instance, family members living within the same house. You have someone that becomes very ill with it, and then other people in the household that don't get sick at all. So how do you handle that, in the workplace? You get somebody that's in the workplace that gets sick, and we know they've been exposed to other employees. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to want to get those employees removed from the workspace. There are some instances where the first responders are able to come to work if they're not symptomatic, but the minute they have a symptom, or the minute we know that they've got a high risk exposure, we're going to remove them from the workspace so that they can keep the rest of the employees safe. That's number one.
And I guess as you look at it from when you started till now and the policies, it seems as though the city has really got a good grasp of what has to be done and what things should be done and down the road as well, kind of the future. You seem to have a good grasp of what needs to be done, I guess.
Well, like we said, safety is number one. So we're going to use common sense, and we're going to use those guidelines that were given to us by the CDC and by the state Department of Health. And our job is to make sure that if we know that there is a risk, we're going to remove those folks from the workplace, and we're going to call in maybe DFFM to come in and do a thorough cleaning. And we've done it. We've sent departments home, and we're managing to keep things somewhat under wraps. It's always a risk, and you never really know, but I've got to say, I think that, they've done a very good job, the department heads, in making sure that, we're communicating and we're keeping everyone informed. And that's really key, is keeping everyone informed.
I was going to ask you, are you, from where you sit, are you pleased with the way things have been going, the way you've been doing things?
I think that everybody is very cognizant of what the atmosphere is like, and they're very in tune with what it is that we should be doing. And I think communication is key, and they've made that a priority, which is very important.
Only got a couple seconds left, but I want to give you the chance. If people have questions or anything for you or the staff, how can they get in touch with you guys? The
best way to get me is through my email, which is judith.perkins@newbedford-mass.gov. That's the best way. My email is always a priority for me. My phone usually rings off the hook. So I would say email is the best way.
And a quick thing too, people who are looking for a job, applying for a job, how do they do that?
Please look on our website on the personnel page. There are employment opportunities that are there, and we'd love to have New Bedford residents please apply.
Sounds good. Good seeing you.
Thank you. It's very nice being here.
That's going to do it for this edition of City Hall Insider. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and we will chat with you again soon. Thanks for watching.